Hey everybody, this is Gary Yao. I'm here with Frank Lopez. Frank, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Gary?
I'm great.
Good.
Right, let's continue with the conversation about probate. But this scenario, I would like to talk about the DIY probate, the do-it-yourself probate. Can you teach us how a person can do it themselves without anybody else?
I could, Gary, and we actually can do another session, which is a step by step, like steps 1 through 6 on how to do it. Before we do that, though, I think it's important to discuss when it makes sense, why you would want to do it and why you wouldn't want to do it. So basically the pros and cons of DIY.
Okay.
Because DIY isn't for everybody. And that's actually the perfect place to start is, the pros and cons. What are the pros? Well, let's start with the cons. Let's get those out of the way.
Let's get it started then.
Let's get it started. So the biggest reason you would not want to do it is time. This is, if you're going to do your own probate, that means that you would have normally hired an attorney to do it for you. And that means that, you're hiring the attorney to do a job.
Right.
So if you're going to do it yourself, guess who just took on a part-time job?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Okay.
You just took on a part-time job for two reasons. One, because it is time-consuming. It's going to take, in general, from start to finish, about 9 months. I've seen it go longer. So the first question is, are you willing to invest that time?
Well, is that 9 months waiting, right? It's like everything else. Like you file your taxes and you wait until they give you your tax return check. That's
Great.
what I assume it would look like.
No, great question, Gary. And yes, you're right. A lot of it takes 9 months because you're essentially waiting on the court.
Right.
You file something with court and then you wait. And then they respond. And then they ask you for more information, and then you file that, and then you wait, and you can go as fast as the court allows you to go. So yes, it takes 9 months, but from a number of hours standpoint, and I couldn't tell you. Actually, that's a great question. I need to ask one of my attorney clients, what the average number of hours it is that they invest, that they put in. Not just them, but their paralegal, because it's the attorney, it's the paralegal that is preparing the paperwork. It is the person that has to go and actually physically file the paperwork. So it's a team working on this. So that is such a great question. I've never even thought to ask, hey, how many hours does it take? But it does take a lot of time. And if you don't have that time, if you're a really busy person, I know you're busy, Gary. So I know your schedule.
Yeah.
So I just, for somebody like you, I don't see how you would be able to do it.
I always wonder, when it's probably, it's because we do a lot of paperwork in our field work. So I assume this is one more piece of paper that you fill out and you file, and I guess that's it. Well, I don't do my paperwork. My transaction coordinator does it, but still.
Well, and someday when I've got a client that's doing their own DIY probate, I'm going to see if I could somehow get you involved so you can see the actual process. So you can see, that it's not as simple as it looks. And that's I think the misconception is what you're saying right now is, well, doesn't look like it would take that long. Doesn't look like I'd file something and then I wait. I put an hour into it and then I wait for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I've had a lot of clients that have done it on their own. And by the time they're done, they're saying, "Oh my God, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and I had no idea how long this was going to take." And looking back, I may not have done it. I might have just hired an attorney not because I couldn't do it, because they were able to do it successfully. And the court does encourage you to do it. The court does say, "Hey, Gary, you want to do it yourself? We're behind you 100%. We'll help you." But so you can do it. It's doable, but it's a project. So that's the first thing. That you have to think about is, do you have the time to do it? It does take a lot of time. Number one. Number two is everybody on the same page? Is there more than one heir?
Mm-hmm.
And if they're and unless, let's say you've got 2-3 heirs, and everybody just very happy, in agreement. Everybody's saying, "Hey, let's hand this over to Gary because Gary can do this, and he's in real estate, so maybe he'd be able to handle it better than us."
Right.
So a situation like that, okay, go ahead, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have one person that is the black sheep of the family,
Mm-hmm.
that you say, "Let's do it this way," and they'll say, "Let's do it the opposite way,"
Mm-hmm.
you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're in trouble. If you have somebody, if you don't have everybody on the same page, on the same team, then you need to get an attorney.
Mm.
Because you're always going to, that person's going to fight you every step of the way. And at some point, you're probably just going to get to a point where you just can't go any further. And you will need an attorney. So number two, everybody has to be on the same page. One big happy family.
Yes.
And then the last thing is, you do need to get a bond. And a bond is when, again, Gary's is in charge of the trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, the probate. There, he's the administrator for the probate. He's in charge. The family's okay with Gary being in charge. Well, Gary's handling all the finances for the estate.
That means I'm paying, right? I'm paying for the fees.
Well, you might, yes, yeah, actually, yes, you could be paying for the fees. In fact, yes, somebody has to pay for the fees. That will probably be you.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, but here's the thing: if there's real estate involved,
Mm-hmm.
and usually there's some bank accounts involved as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's real estate, there's bank accounts, and Gary's in charge of all of it. And the court gives Gary permission to be in charge of all of it. And Gary sells the real estate. And the house is paid for, and Gary gets $900,000 in his bank account, and there's $100,000 liquid in the bank account. Gary has access to $1 million.
Yeah.
And Gary Gary's been hanging out with what's the Dodgers pitcher. Gary's been hanging around with the Dodgers interpreter.
Yes.
And he's been making some bets.
Uh-huh.
And it's time to pay those bets.
Ooh.
So bad example, but a current one. Anyway, so the court needs to know that money is safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that money is protected by a bond. So you're basically buying insurance,
Mm-hmm.
so that if the money, for whatever reason, the money disappears,
Mm-hmm.
Somebody decides, "Hey, this is a lot of money, and I'm moving to Costa Rica," the rest of the family has to be protected. So the bond basically guarantees that won't happen, and if it does, the family is basically covered. It's insurance. Now, the reason I'm going into so much detail is that the person that applies for the bond has to qualify for the bond.
What are the qualifications?
Well, that's a great question. For a bond, they like to see that you're employed.
Mm-hmm.
They like to see that you have good credit. They will run a credit report. They like to see stability. Like to see that you haven't been moving around from employer to employer or location to location. If the bond company doesn't feel comfortable with you, and here's the other thing. And they prefer that you have an attorney involved. If you have an attorney involved, and let's say you're not the perfect person to get the bond, the credit, employment, whatever, but there's an attorney involved, the bond companies generally will still provide the bond, because there's an attorney that they know that's overseeing everything. But now, if you have somebody who has not a real strong background and there's no attorney, there's a real good chance that the bond company is going to say, hey, sorry, no, we'll pass, call somebody else. And you call another bond company and they tell you the same thing. So it does have to be somebody that can be bonded, or you're stuck, game over. So those are the three things that really need to be in place to do the DIY probate.
Let me recap, Frank. I don't want to recap. The three major things is time, because you talk about up to possibly 9 months or even more.
Yes.
Agreement for all the members of the family, and you have to have a bond or some kind of like insurance then.
Yes, and somebody who can qualify for the bond. So yes, so those are the top three. Those are the cons. In other words, those are the potential obstacles. Okay, now let's talk about the pros. Why would you do deep?
For that, I will say, because our time's up, let's save the DIY pros for next time. I know you want to. I know I want to continue, but
you're kidding. I thought I was okay. Yes, we'll save that for the next.
It's been over 10 minutes, my friend.
Wow. I was just getting warmed up.
So let's let's save that for our next time. The pros of doing DIY probate, do it yourself probate. Okay.
Yes.
Frank, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
You could either go to franklopezbroker.com, or you could call my number 626-289-1111.
Awesome. Well, Frank, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week.